Good morning, everybody. We're going to begin our show today in Afghanistan and the frantic evacuation effort at Kabul airport.
The White House says 9,000 people have now been evacuated since August 14th, but tens of thousands of Americans and Afghans who worked with U.S. forces are still stranded in the country. The pace of evacuations is being affected by the ongoing chaos outside the airport, where hundreds of Afghans face Taliban checkpoints amid reports of violence. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby addressed those concerns, speaking with reporters yesterday.
We have seen reports of the Taliban harassing and physically so some Afghans that were trying to move to the airport. We are in constant communication with them, as my answer to Courtney indicated, to make sure that that they have the same visibility on the people that we want to see get through as we do.
A UN threat assessment report seen by several news organizations says the Taliban is stepping up efforts to find people who work with U.S. and NATO forces, even going door to door to look for them. The report says the group has a priority list of people that it wants to arrest and is threatening to kill or apprehend family members if they don't give themselves up. Our team of correspondents, Ali Aruzzi, Monica Alba, and Julia Ainsley are all standing by to bring us more on this story. Let's kick things off with Ali, who is in Tehran, and Monica at the White House. So, Ali, evacuations are continuing out of Kabul airport today. We mentioned the number now up to 9,000 evacuated amid all that chaos. What is the latest on the ground there?
Hey, Joe, that's right. The evacuation plans from Kabul airport are being stepped up day by day by the U.S. military. As you mentioned, 9,000 people have been evacuated in the last 6 days. But there's still thousands of Americans and Afghans that work with Americans and other allied countries that are stranded. Now, for foreigners, it's slightly easier to get to the airport and out of the country still, but it's still a perilous journey. We got reports this morning that a German civilian sustained gunshot wounds on the way to the airport. He's now been flown out of the country, and his injuries are apparently not life-threatening. But it really just does underscore how chaotic and dangerous the situation on the ground is there for foreign nationals, let alone Afghans trying to flee the Taliban. There have been heartbreaking images of families, including elderly and disabled family members and children, trying to get to the airport but being whipped back and beaten by Taliban fighters. So it's still a chaotic, devastating scene in and around and across the country.
A lot of questions about how we got here, Monica. A source has told NBC News that diplomats urged the State Department to begin evacuations a month earlier. So tell us, what warnings did they give? What was the government's response?
24 diplomats, Joe, based at the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, did send what's known as this dissent cable, an internal memo to the Secretary of State, expressing concern, really, about how quickly the Taliban could potentially take over the country. This is something we're learning about from a source familiar who describes the cable, even though NBC News has not seen it for ourselves, who says really and emphasizes this is an important way for those within the State Department ranks to express their opinions without fear of retribution. It's anonymous, and usually it's a way for diplomats to say, even though this is the policy the United States is pursuing, we disagree, and here are the reasons why. The date of that is most notable, July 13th, as the president was announcing this drawdown. And we do have a comment from the State Department spokesperson who says this kind of dissent is important to contribute to the conversation. But as we know, the drawdown was going to continue as planned and as directed by the president. Joe.
Ali, earlier this week, the Taliban said it would not seek revenge against those who helped U.S. and NATO forces. Now this UN report we mentioned is warning the group is literally going door to door hunting for people who are on a list. What's going on here?
That's right. According to this United Nations report, the Taliban are going house to house, door to door, searching for opponents and their families, which is, of course, deepening fears that Afghanistan's new rulers are planning revenge. After rooting out government forces and taking over Kabul, they promised that they wouldn't go after these people. They put together this kind of very well-crafted PR blitz saying that there's going to be all-inclusive. But people that know the Taliban knew that they are not people to be trusted. So now there's a real fear of revenge. And not only once they find these people that had worked for foreign forces, for NATO, as translators, the fear is that they will be tortured, they will be abducted, and they may be killed. There were already a report that the Taliban had gone searching for a journalist who worked for the TV station Deutsche Welle in Germany. They couldn't find him, but they found a family member of his, which they killed and injured another one. That journalist was able to escape to Germany.
So, Monica, I mean, President Biden, we know, is set to speak again about Afghanistan later on this morning. While we know pulling troops out of Afghanistan was largely a politically popular move, he has faced a lot of criticism in recent days over what's happening, how this is unfolding. What do we think we can expect to hear from him today?
White House officials say, Joe, that he's essentially going to repeat the argument he made a couple of days ago, which is that he stands by his decision. He has no regrets, but he is deeply saddened and troubled by the scenes unfolding at the airport earlier this week. And that is why he directed the Pentagon to send in more troops and to try to get that situation at least under control. The president expected to also talk about why he feels this was the right time to do all of this. And we got a preview of that in that ABC interview he did just yesterday and the day before, where he said essentially there was going to be no way to get out of Afghanistan, quote, without chaos ensuing. So I think you can expect him to defend that. In addition to providing these more technical updates, we haven't been getting as much from the White House. They've been coming from the Pentagon and from the State Department, but the White House wanting to get out today, put the president out before he leaves for Wilmington for a part 2 or part 3, depending on how you count it, of a summer vacation that obviously was mostly a working one up until this point, given the crisis in Afghanistan.
All right, Monica, Ali, thank you so much for your reporting this morning. Appreciate it.
So as we mentioned earlier, among those Afghans desperate to leave are those who worked with the United States forces during the war, and some are still in touch with their former friends and colleagues. One interpreter, Najib Rahimi, has been in contact with former Army Captain Jeff Trammell. NBC News Justice correspondent Julia Ainsley has been following this for us. Julia, good morning to you. Great to see you. You actually spoke with Rahimi, who is stranded at the airport with his family right now. Tell us about what he's going through.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I was able to do a video chat with Rahimi and his family while they're just in the throngs of this crowd. There's gunfire firing overhead. In fact, that same gunfire is one that started a stampede just 2 days ago and then again last night, hurting his 2 daughters. He has 3 daughters. 2 are twins, 6 years old. Those were hurt in the stampede. And as he's been afraid, he's been turning to Trammell for advice. Rahimi tells me he has all of the documents. He has documents to show that he was an interpreter for 2 years with U.S. forces going to provinces around Afghanistan. He has references from people in the U.S. military about his services. He has a pending visa application that's been pending for 7 months with no word. He's not someone who just now applied. All of these documents are in his hand, but until he can get through one of those gates at the airport, no one can even review those documents. And so it's really frustrating for him. He's in the throngs of this crowd, and he's very worried about the safety of his family. And he says he cannot follow President Biden's advice to go shelter in place because he has no more home to go back to. The Taliban will target him there.
Right. Where is he supposed to shelter in place? What type of advice is he getting from his friend Trammell in his communications? And has he literally not heard from any kind of U.S. government official as to how and when he and his family, his young kids, could get out?
He has not heard from any U.S. government official on what to do. His really only connection to the U.S. is through Trammell, his friend who he worked with in Afghanistan. And Trammell is giving him a lot of advice on, I heard maybe the East Gate might work. Now try the North Gate. He's running around to these different gates outside of the airport. And I've been in touch with Trammell, and Trammell was able to share with me screenshots of their conversations. And in addition to those logistics, there's just an incredible story of friendship here. As Trammell is telling Rahimi to stay brave, telling Rahimi that he's the bravest interpreter he knew in Afghanistan and that he can get through this. Even when the gunfire starts, when the stampedes start, he is telling him to stay strong just as he stayed strong for him during those times in Afghanistan.
I just can't even imagine, Julia, what these families are going through right now as they await some type of exit out of Afghanistan right now, knowing their lives are in danger. Talk me through these pending visa applications that you talk about. Rahimi is not the only family who is in this situation.
That's right. There are thousands in this situation, and the State Department has said that they are prioritized. And as Monica mentioned, there have been many Afghans who have those pending applications, who have been fortunate enough to be flown out and taken to the United States. From there, then they have to go through the process of actually obtaining that visa to be able to stay in the U.S. But the vetting on the Afghan side, when they're still in Afghanistan, is still very intense for many reasons. Of course, we want to make sure that these are people who are not national security risk. But right now, I'm told that there is just such a backlog that the State Department is not able to keep up with this. And my colleague Josh Letterman today said that the people in the intelligence community warned the Biden administration that they needed to start this process a month earlier. And right now, we're still seeing them unable to keep up with this surge in demand.
All right, Julie Ainsley Forrest, thanks so much for your reporting on this. Appreciate it.
An hours-long standoff near the U.S. Capitol came to a peaceful conclusion yesterday with a North Carolina man taken into custody after police say he made a bomb threat. Authorities say the suspect parked his black pickup truck in front of the Library of Congress, claimed to have a bomb. Capitol Police say when they later searched the truck, they found possible bomb-making materials, but no visible explosives. Before his arrest, the suspect live-streamed videos from inside his truck, broadcasting anti-government messages until Facebook deactivated his account. As a precaution, authorities evacuated the library, Supreme Court, a House office building, and the offices of the Republican National Committee.
We had information and evidence of what was in the bed of his truck, and there were some things that were concerning, but ultimately we were able to take him in custody without incident.
The suspect is identified as 49-year-old Floyd Ray Roseberry. Police successfully convinced him to surrender after 5 hours. This incident, of course, comes more than 7 months after the January 6th insurrection on Capitol Hill.
Let's talk COVID now. 3 fully vaccinated U.S. senators have tested positive for the coronavirus all in the same day. They are Democratic Senator John Hickenlooper, Independent Senator Angus King, and Republican Senator Roger Wicker. All 3 took tests after experiencing symptoms. All 3 announced positive results as of yesterday. Because they are fully vaccinated, they are expected not to experience more serious symptoms. The Senate is in recess this week. Many members are in home states, either preparing for 2022 elections or checking in with their district offices. These are just the latest in a string of prominent breakthrough cases amongst lawmakers. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Texas Governor Greg Abbott both recently tested positive after being vaccinated.
For the first time in over a month, more than 1 million COVID vaccine doses were administered in the U.S. in a single day. The White House says it is the highest number in nearly 7 weeks. More than half of the doses were people getting their first shot. Vaccinations are picking up as the Delta variant moves through the country and more employers are issuing vaccine mandates. But that's not the case everywhere. In Mississippi, cases are reaching levels higher than any other time in the pandemic. Just over a third of the state right now is fully vaccinated. And just yesterday, Mississippi's governor reiterated he will not issue a mask mandate. But with the Delta variant raging in this state and more kids getting sick, people who held out on getting the vaccine are now starting to come around. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber joins us now from the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson. So, Ellison, first of all, Mississippi is one of the lowest vaccination rates nationwide. We've known that for weeks now. What is the latest on cases and hospitalizations? Are the unvaccinated still the ones really driving case numbers there?
Yes, to the last question, the unvaccinated are by and large the bulk of cases and hospitalizations and deaths. I mean, when you look at the numbers, it's over 97% last check of COVID cases being among the unvaccinated. 89%, give or take, of hospitalized cases of COVID-19. That is among the unvaccinated. Look, the situation in this state is catastrophic, and there really is no other way to put it. There are over 1,600 Mississippians hospitalized because of COVID-19. Right now, this state is leading the world in COVID cases per capita. This state has less than 10 ICU beds available, but close to 100 people waiting for those ICU beds. In Jackson, on this hospital campus, they have opened 2 field hospitals in less than a week. And that's not just for show. They are using them. We watched as they brought patients into the newest field hospital, a field hospital that is designed and set up for COVID patients needing critical care. When you look at the vaccination rates here, it is obvious that this is a state that is a largely unvaccinated population. Less than 40% of people here are fully vaccinated. In the last couple of weeks, the number of doses being administered week by week, they've increased about 120%. So that is really significant in a state where vaccination rates are so low. But given how low they're starting, they really have a long way to go. And it's going to take quite a while for hospitals to see any sort of benefit of that if those higher rates of doses being administered actually hold moving forward. Right now, what we keep hearing from hospitals, what we keep hearing from health officials is that they are at the worst moment they have ever been at right now. And hospitals, I mean, they are sort of crumbling under the weight of all of these COVID cases. Joe.
Now, listen, I know you've been speaking with families. You spoke with the mother of a 17-year-old who's now home from the hospital after battling COVID. Now they are getting the vaccine. How's her son? What did she tell you about their decision to finally get the shot?
Yeah, I mean, Keelan is just 17. He was in the ICU at this children's hospital. He's a healthy kid, an active kid, not someone who on paper you would think would wind up in the hospital if he got sick. But that is exactly what happened. As you said, he is unvaccinated. That's something that he, his mom, his siblings, they're all completely reassessing now. Listen to what his mom told us about what happened to him.
I should have done it sooner, a lot sooner. And I'm just thankful that the end result was not something heartbreaking because it took me so long to make a decision.
Did you ever think when he was in the hospital or when he was at home that Keelan might not make it?
Yes, of course I did. He was having a lot of problems with breathing, and I cried a lot of nights while he was in ICU, and I prayed out to God to just keep him.
So Keelan was the first person to contract COVID-19 in his household. He brought it home, and it spread to his mom, his sibling, his one-year-old nephew. The only person in their household who did not get sick was an uncle who was also the only person fully vaccinated. So now the entire family is planning to get vaccinated. You heard his mom say there, it wasn't necessarily something she says that they were against. They just were debating it, had some concerns, and hadn't really gotten around to doing it. But it is a decision, a delay that really almost cost her son. Joe?
Glad to see that her son, though, is doing better. Ellison, thanks so much for sharing their story and for all your reporting. We appreciate it.
All right, NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now. Dr. Azar, thanks for joining us on this. We really appreciate it. You're hearing Ellison there in her reporting. You got field hospitals now sprouting up. You have at capacity ICUs, kids continuing to get sick, having to be in the ICU. I think a lot of folks are basically asking the question of when is this wave going to end, right? Dr. Fauci having somewhat of an answer to that. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We've seen in the UK that after several weeks of a high acceleration, it's turned around. There's a lot we can do about it and to ensure that it not only continues to accelerate, but it really goes down to a very low level. And that's the thing we've been talking about all the time. And that is we have 90 million people in this country who are eligible to be vaccinated who have not yet gotten vaccinated.
So he talks about that 90 million people that aren't yet vaccinated, right? It seems as if it's picking up a little bit, but nonetheless, that is a large group of people that have not been vaccinated in this country. Taking a look at what happened in the UK, looking at what happened in the Delta variant in India as well. What is your assessment as to when this current wave we're dealing with in this country is going to slow?
Honestly, not anytime soon. I mean, if you listen to the experts and you do the math on how transmissible the Delta variant is, it's infecting, 5 to 9 people are infected by every one person who's infected with Delta, which is vastly higher than the original strain. In fact, the Delta variant is ripping through this country, which is half vaccinated, much faster than the original strain went through an entire unvaccinated country. And I think that's because the concept here is that if you are vaccinated as an individual, you are very well protected. But at the community level, we really are not. The virus, this strain, is going to go to those geographic pockets of unvaccinated people. These people are socially connected. We're going to see that. until, yes, of course, vaccination is going to help, but we know that that takes time. But vaccination alone is not the answer. We're pulling back on all of the other mitigation strategies at the same time that we're trying to vaccinate is not the right thing to do. It's not the UK outbreak and the India outbreak, they didn't magically go away.
Right.
The Delta variant basically found everyone it could infect. And when it ran out of people to infect, that's when case numbers started to go down, unfortunately.
So let's talk about a possible solution here, which is this third booster shot, right? Now you have some scientists essentially saying this third booster shot is premature. The science is not yet there. The data is not yet there. But yet you have folks that are immunocompromised already getting. I have folks in my family already getting the booster shot. The president saying by the end of September, all Americans will be able to get that third booster shot. Where are you on this? Is the data there?
Well, I have to tell you, it was shocking to go from Friday and trying to put all the pieces in place together for our patients who fell into that immunocompromised category to go to sleep on Monday night. And the last thing I saw on Twitter before I closed my eyes was that suddenly everyone would be eligible for a booster in September. Blew me away. When I listened to the rationale, I can understand why they made the recommendation. I think purely from looking at the Israeli data as sort of a lens into the future, where their data clearly showed that there was a waning and diminution in the effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine, because they use that pretty much exclusively, the longer out from vaccination an individual was. So that means people January, February vaccinated versus in April, they saw the protection against severe disease went down to 55%. The data we have here in the country right now is fantastic. The protection against mild to moderate disease has gone down, okay, but it seems to have sustained its effectiveness in terms of severe hospitalization and disease and death. But I think they're really looking toward the future, and they're saying this is probably inevitable, and we want to be prepared for that inevitability so that come that 8-month mark, mid-September, late September, we want to have the FDA approval on board. We want the CDC to be on board to make that recommendation. It's not, it hasn't been signed yet. Okay. It's not inked yet. This is just the plan. But I certainly understand from a standpoint just today in time that experts would say that the current evidence does not support that decision today. But I think that we all might be saying something very different a month from now, Yasmin.
Got it. Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you as always for your clarity on this. Appreciate it. All right, so California is still battling record-breaking wildfires. North Carolina dealing with major flooding from Tropical Storm Fred. Want to get a check at the latest on the extreme weather across the country, including Tropical Storm Henri. That could pose a big threat to New England this weekend.
Yeah, Bill Cairns is here with more. Bill, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Our fears are going to come true. We are going to see a hurricane into a highly populated area of southern New England for the first time in 30 years. I mean, come Monday morning, I would be shocked and surprised if we don't have millions of people without power and a lot of damage in southern New England. So let's get into it now. We are watching a hurricane watch that has been issued from Long Island all the way to Cape Cod. For some areas of Long Island, this is the first hurricane watch since Irene in 2011, some 3,000 days. So it's been a while since this area has seen something like this. So let me get you the latest stats and statistics. 65-mile-per-hour wind. So it's not a hurricane yet. We do think it will likely become a hurricane tomorrow during the day. It'll be safely off the North Carolina coast. So everyone in the southeast, the Carolinas, the mid-Atlantic, you are fine. But then the storm heads up into southern New England as we go throughout the day on Sunday. Let me zoom in a little closer to give you a little, what towns and what areas will be hardest hit. The red line shows the current center line. This shifts. Yesterday it was over Nantucket. Now it's over Providence and over Rhode Island. So it still can shift in the next 48 hours. That's why we have that white line. That's the cone of uncertainty, which now goes all the way to Islip into areas of Connecticut and even up into Maine. A storm will weaken as it goes northward. So we may get a landfall as a hurricane. It may be a tropical storm, but regardless, we do expect significant impacts. How certain are we where it's going? That black line is the forecast from the Hurricane Center. All the other lines are our computer models. Some of them are in the Long Island, some of them are in the Cape Cod. So we're not etched in stone exactly where it's going. But what we do know is we will have a significant storm surge to the right of the center, 3 to 5 feet at least. And then on top of this, guys, we'll have obviously winds that could gust up to 80 to 90 miles per hour. The leaves are on the trees in New England that hasn't been hit by a hurricane in a long time. There's going to be extensive power outages. And today is one of the, you have 2 days to prepare. You have today and you have Saturday. Sunday is going to be too late.
Never a good forecast outlook when we get news like that, Bill. I know you'll be watching it for us. Thank you, my friend.